Good afternoon, everybody, and it's wonderful to welcome some real people to the temple. Yeah, for this, the last Path of Enlightenment course for 2021. But in case I forget to say so later, we do have a White Tara session next weekend between 4 and 5. There was an email that went out recently about that, and people are able to attend subject to COVID requirements if you're interested in that. If so, we'd love to see you. We begin with a light offering for which has been sponsored by Chris and Christine for Paul Sokolic's mother, Joyce Brooks, and this is given with the dedication that Joyce may have continuing care, a peaceful and healthy transition to a new life, replete with Dharma and a very holy Guru. And so we take some time to reflect on offering this beautiful light to the Shakyamuni Buddha statue with this motivation. And we'll begin with the prayers. And since this is the last class for this year, we'll do the prayers in, most of the prayers in both Tibetan and English on this occasion. Beginning with the prayer of praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Tempa Chendende Dejin Shepa Drachampa Yangdapa Tupe Sanje Ripa Dang Shapsu Tempa Dewa Shepa Jitin Tempa Cheburu E Karo Jua Lana Mepa Ladang Minam Tempa Sanje Chandende Beljawa Shakya Dupala Shatsalu Churu Chapsu Chiwo. Teacher, Bhagawan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly pure and complete Buddha, all-knowing, having poise, Sugata, apprehender of the world, navigator of beings to be subdued, incomparable, teacher of gods and humans, to the Buddha, the Bhagawan, the glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, we prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. And the refuge in bodhichitta prayer. Sanghichodam soji jonam la Jiangzhu Barudani Chasuji Dagijin Soji Pesonam Ji Dola Penche Sangye Dropaisho. To the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. To the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. And the short mandala offering. Sashi Ji Joji Buddhist ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, adorned with sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered thus, may all beings enjoy such pure lands. And 7-limbed prayer. I prostrate my 3 doors with a mind of respect and offer all actually arranged and mentally emanated offerings. I reveal all the downfalls and negativities that I have ever collected and rejoice in the virtues of individuals and superiors. Please remain perfectly abiding until samsara is no longer seen. I request you to turn the vast and profound wheels of Dharma. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenments. The prayer of lineage of gurus, which we will do in Tibetan English. Punso gele jeve trompe ku daye rove rewa conversum malu sheja jishin zikbetu shachi tsu de la gu chasa dame tempare se chicho Jove sepa kanji konane, trame shingdu trope namroa, me pam jambe yangla shaksalo, shendo papa kava javeyum, jishin gompa raze zomlidya. Ludro tome jene sasumna yang sudrape javla dakchatsa shingta jimbo nile jupe samutawa jachen chupelo mano yang suzupe dupe Tambe zuzin ame zeladu, doju kanji lamji nezupe, jishin zikshin zive dom sepe, jalve tamcho malu zinbai, losandrape pella shaksalo. Rabjang sumra konata vemi, kelsang tapa rupe jumucho, sebe chupe take sepai, sauze jinyen namla guchakso. Body born from 1,000,000 magnificent excellent virtues, speech fulfilling the hopes of infinite beings, a mind that sees all objects of knowledge precisely, I bow my head to the chief among the Shakyas. Supreme sons of the incomparable teacher, carrying the load of all the conqueror's deeds, by their emanations appearing in countless realms, I prostrate to Maitreya and Manjushri. The mother of conquerors is difficult to fathom. The precise thought is in commentaries written by Jambuvipa's ornaments, Nagarjuna and Asanga. I prostrate at the feet of those most renowned in the 3 realms. From these 2 great chariots come the excellent lineages of the paths of profound view and vast deeds, their essential points gathered thoroughly and without fault. Prostration to the lamp holding this treasury of instruction, giving explanation through compassion, by seeing precisely and completely the essential points of all paths of Sutra and Tantra, holder of the conqueror's entire holy Dhamma, prostrations to the glorious Losang Dragpa. I, seeing all the infinite teachings, supreme way of crossing for those entering the journey of liberation, moved by compassion to deeds skilled in method, prostrations to the spiritual masters who make everything clear. And the Great Treasury of Excellence, which we will do only in English. The kind master is the basis of all qualities, and proper alliance is the root of the path. By seeing this excellence and through much striving, bestow blessings to be devoted with great respect. This gentle support of freedom obtained this one time is most difficult to achieve. Knowing its great value gives rise to a mind seizing its essence constantly day and night. Bestow blessings to generate this continuum unceasingly. It is like a bubbling water, this constantly moving body and life. Thus remember the swift collapse of death. Beyond death, like body and shadow, white and black karmic results follow after. By gaining firm certainty in this, the mass of fault, subtle and very subtle, are abandoned, and the accomplishment of all virtuous collections completed. Bestow blessings to ever retain conscientiousness. The qualities of samsara are unfit to be trusted. The door to all suffering, do not be content with these enjoyments. By knowing its defects, bestow blessings to develop a great aspiration for the bliss of liberation. By that pure thought, great conscientiousness is drawn forth, and mindfulness and awareness of the individual liberation, the root of the teachings. Bestow blessings to make this the essential practice. Just as I myself have fallen into samsara's ocean, all living beings as mother are also like that. By seeing the responsibility for the liberation of beings, bestow blessings to be trained in supreme bodhichitta. However, by merely generating the mind, if not acquainted with the three aspects of ethics, enlightenment will not be attained. By seeing this excellence, bestow blessings to train with strong effort in the vows of conqueror sons. Pacifying distraction toward perverse objects, by way of proper analysis of the perfect meaning, bestow blessings to swiftly and continuously generate the path related to the union of calm abiding and special insight. Thus, becoming a vessel trained in the common paths, enter the Vajrayana, supreme evolution of all vehicles, bestow blessings to engage the easy path itself, that sacred way of crossing for fortunate beings. The base of practice for the two aspects of attainment is when guarding the pure vows of commitment is found to be genuine and certain. Bestow blessings to protect them even at risk of life. Then, by understanding properly the important points, which are the essence of the two stages of the Tantra classes, bestow blessings to practice according to these holy teachings with continuous effort in the supreme four-session yoga. Like that, may the spiritual friend revealing the gentle path and the friends of proper practice stand firm. Bestow blessings to quickly pacify the masses of outer and inner hindrances. In all rebirths, may I never be parted from perfect gurus and the enjoyment of the glorious Dharma. By utterly completing all qualities, paths and grounds, may I quickly achieve the state of Vajradhara. And again, since this is the last Path to Enlightenment session, I thought we might do Geshela's Rainbow Body meditation today. So for those who aren't familiar with it, this is a meditation that Geshela developed based on a tradition of meditation from highest yoga tantra, but he's adapted it into a beautiful visualization and relaxation practice. So we begin by setting our posture, making sure that we're sitting with our back straight but comfortable. Our head slightly tilted forward, eyes half open, half closed. Hands folded in the lap, right hand on the left palm with the thumb tips touching. Shoulders level, arms extended out slightly from the body at the elbows. Mouth, jaw and tongue relaxed. And having set the physical posture, we set the mental motivation for our meditation. Everything depends on mind. And every moment of mind connects to and shapes subsequent moments of mind. So the motivation that we bring to our meditation is what determines its ultimate result. Ideally, we would all like this time that we spend in meditation to be a cause for the most positive result imaginable. That it is a seed not only for our own happiness, for our release from all suffering, but that we develop the wisdom, skill, energy, and great love and compassion, motivated to benefit every other living being without exception. Because every being without exception yearns for happiness as clearly and compellingly as we do. They never want a moment's suffering. Any more than we do, than those who are closest and dearest to us do. And so if this meditation helps develop our mind, to bring more joy, resilience, wisdom, freedom from suffering, for every living being, then it is supremely beneficial. So we reflect like that for a short time. To stable our mind further, for a short period we'll do some breathing meditation, allowing our attention to release all wandering to external objects, so that it centres and settles single-pointedly on the natural rise and full of our breath. Just for this time, we can put aside memories of the past, plans or speculation about the future. Just for this time, allow ourselves to rest fully in the present moment. Quietly observing the natural rise and fall of our breath. And visualize that at our crown chakra is a tiny, brilliant, rainbow-coloured drop of light. Light rays emanate from the drop, transforming our crown chakra into rainbow light. The rainbow-coloured drop of light then descends to our throat chakra, also transforming it into beautiful, clear rainbow light. Next, the drop of light descends to our heart chakra, also transforming it into radiant, peaceful, rainbow-coloured light. rainbow drop, then descends to our navel chakra, also transforming it into beautiful, pristine, rainbow-coloured light. Rainbow drop then descends to the chakra at the base of the spine. Also transforming it into rainbow light. Then for a time, hold the overall appearance of each of these 5 chakras: crown, throat, heart, navel, base, in a form peaceful, radiant, pure rainbow-coloured light. Then, from each of these chakras, the rainbow-coloured light extends throughout the rest of our body. So from our crown chakra, throughout our head and so forth. So that step by step, our entire body is in the nature of pure rainbow light. Our ordinary body is transformed into a body of rainbow light. light then emanates out from our body. Transforming the room or building we are in, also into the nature of rainbow light. Then extends further outside the room or building where we are in, to the immediate area. This is your property. Transforming it all into beautiful, pure rainbow light. Feel that the rainbow light keeps extending further, transforming the region around it, also into the nature of rainbow light. Step by step, it extends to the whole of your country, transforming it all and all beings within it into the nature of rainbow light. Very pure and peaceful. Rainbow light continues to extend, transforming our whole world, and extending out from it in 10 directions. To the whole of space. Transforming all beings and all environments everywhere into rainbow light forms. Concentrate on this. Oneself, all environments, all beings, transformed into rainbow light. And stabilise on this visualisation. Visualise step by step the rainbow light gathers and collects from the furthest reaches of space, gathering back into one's own rainbow light body. Rainbow light body then collects and dissolves from the feet upwards, navel, heart, throat, and all the rainbow light collects and dissolves into a rainbow coloured drop of light at your crown. And this rainbow coloured drop also collects and dissolves in pure emptiness. dedicate the merit of our practice. Thinking through this practice of relaxation and purification, may I and all living beings quickly overcome all difficulties, obstacles, ill health, anxiety, bad conditions. May we quickly experience all good conditions, develop happiness and joy, especially may all of our positive qualities flourish. May we all quickly progress to the state of perfect enlightenment, Buddhahood, the benefit of all. Release our attention and complete the meditation. So in Geshela's notes about that meditation and in his commentary on it, he said that if we do this regularly, it has the effect that our body feels very light, energetic. So today we're winding up on chapter 10, Geshela's explanation of refuge, which, as we've said before, is explained in 4 sections. So the causes of going for refuge, which focuses in particular on having the confidence-based belief that the Triple Gem is able to help us realise one of 3 objectives, namely avoiding a lower rebirth, or escape from psychic existence altogether, or the attainment of enlightenment to enable every other living being to also be free from psychic existence. Secondly, Geshela explains the objects of refuge. So this goes into the qualities in brief of each of the 3 jewels, especially as explained by Acharya. And in the 3rd part of the chapter, the way of going for refuge, there's a much more detailed explanation of the qualities of Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, as well as an explanation of subjects such as the differences between them and the way that we should regard them for the purposes of our practice. And the 4th division that we began on last week deals with it, is called Having Taken Refuge, the Stages of Training. So once we have a clear understanding of refuge, once we actually take refuge, well then this gives, this section of the chapter gives us guidance as to what we actually have to do. And that 4th division is in 2 parts. So the first explains the commitments of refuge, and that's there's 3 different subjects that are raised there. One from the Sangha's compendium, another from the oral training, which is explained in terms of abandoning certain negative actions and cultivating positive actions, and then there are other general instructions. So that was where we got to last week. So the second part of the guidance for the stages of training, after the explanation of the commitments is an explanation of the benefits of refuge. And again, this is in two parts. One based on Asanga's explanation in his compendium, and the second according to the oral tradition. So this explanation appears in Path of Enlightenment on page 317. So the first of these, namely the explanation of the benefits of refuge that the Sangha gave us, Geshela gives no real commentary on it, on these 8 points that he explains there. And also we covered this in the meditation that we did 2 weeks ago. So I won't say a whole lot more about it because we covered it there, except to suggest that a way of approaching it and gaining the most benefit out of studying this is to go through each of these points ourselves and reflect, as we did in that meditation, how it is that refuge, for example, is the cause of gaining superior joy. That, in order to understand that sends us back to reflecting on what refuge is. And it also enables us to reflect what would our own life be like, what would our own experience be like if we set the direction where continuously our project, our main goal is to apply opponents to negative minds as they arise and to cultivate positive minds at every opportunity that we have. Because after all, that is the essence of refuge. If we're taking refuge, then we're looking to follow in according to the example of the Buddha. We're looking to cultivate virtue and to reduce our non-virtue, as explained in the Dharma, and of course we rely on the community, the Sangha, in order to do that. But more importantly, from an essential point of view, if our main commitment, our main interest, our main preoccupation is developing positive minds, and especially in identifying and opposing our self-cherishing mind, which frames so much of our response to the things we experience, if instead of simply blindly following our self-cherishing mind, we reflect the guidance that we reflect on and are directed by the guidance from the Dharma, well, then we can imagine how transformative that would be. So it's really good to make this real for ourselves, to go through each of these points, to think about them, to understand how they would arise from taking refuge. And, for example, to reflect, well, if, say, in 5 years, I was much more patient. But suppose there's a situation at the moment, particular people who really push my buttons. How would it be if in 5 years' time, based on thinking, listening, meditation and so forth, I was able to keep my mind in a much more stable place when I encountered that situation or that person? How would it be if instead of responding to that person with irritation, resentment and so forth, I was able to generate compassion or affection? How transformative would it be if we were able to respond to all difficulties with that more mindful and positive point of view? And ultimately, of course, that's what refuge implies. It's not something theoretical or ritualistic. So we will go through, though, the explanation of the benefits according to the oral tradition, which begins on page 327, and again there are 8 of these. So the first of these is that by taking refuge, then, and this is self-evident in one sense, that we become a Buddhist. So Of course, it doesn't matter whether we become, it's completely up to us whether anyone chooses to follow the Buddhist path or not. But if the Buddhist path attracts us, and in particular the goals of the Buddhist path are ones that we would like to realise in our own life in a full and wholehearted way, then by logical necessity that implies that we would need to take refuge, because refuge means relying on Buddha, Dharma and Sangha with a confidence-based belief. So even if aspirationally we think that the Buddhist path really appeals to us, then the way to actually integrate that into our own personality and our practice is to practice refuge. There's no other way. Secondly, it's the basis of all ordinations and empowerments. So, for example, we might be very attracted to the beautiful teachings on bodhichitta, the wonderful altruistic aspiration to benefit every other living being, whoever they are, whatever they've done to us, whatever their relationship to us, to have that capacity to have genuine affection for every living being, as powerful affection as we would have for the person who's dearest to us in our life, and without fabrication, without effort, to naturally have that response of warmth and affection. We might think that's a wonderful, wonderful thing to aspire to. Again, in order to develop bodhicitta, then that depends on the practices of bodhicitta, it depends on the commitments of bodhicitta, and to take the commitments of bodhicitta, then that depends on refuge. And again, that's completely logical, because bodhicitta is the aspiration to attain enlightenment, to attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all living beings. So it presupposes that we have a strong realisation of refuge. Likewise with Vajrayana empowerment. So many practitioners are interested in the beautiful practices of Vajrayana, so they might feel a strong connection with white Tara or green Tara, or some of the highest yoga tantra practices, for example, or wrathful deities such as Vajrapani or Mahakala, or wisdom practices such as Manjushri. So we may feel a strong connection with the images of those deities, and we might really like to practice them. We can only do that based on receiving a Vajrayana empowerment, and a Vajrayana empowerment again depends on the realisation of refuge. If we take empowerment and don't have a sound realisation of refuge, then it might be a pleasant experience, but it's not actually an empowerment. The third benefit, according to the oral tradition, is that our negative karma and delusions are diminished and purified. And again, this is logical, because by taking refuge, we're orienting ourselves to the Dharma. In the case of the refuge of the small scope, we're turning away from the sufferings of the lower realms and their causes, the negative minds that are their causes. And so naturally, we're turning away from the causes of negative karma. Likewise, with the refuge of the medium scope, where we aspire for freedom from cyclic existence altogether, and especially with the refuge of the great scope, where we're aspiring to enlightenment for the benefit of all living beings. And again, we can understand this, because if our mind is uncontrolled, so for most of the time we simply follow our self-cherishing. What we feel like doing, what's good for us, is what we do. We are supportive and affectionate to those who help us in getting what we want, and those who get in the way of us getting what we want, we can be negative and destructive towards. That's the basic pattern of a mind that is driven by self-cherishing. And so naturally, because self-cherishing is such a predominant force in our behaviour, then that gives rise to the mind of anger. When we don't get what we want, it gives rise to the mind of attachment, and it's all permeated by the various types of ignorance, pride, and so forth. Refuge sends us in a different direction. So for the first time, when we take genuine refuge, we're opposing that pattern of self-cherishing. And so we can see why it isn't an extravagant claim to say that taking refuge purifies negative karma. Refuge depends on mind. Negative karma depends on mind. And when we take refuge, we're initiating a mental pattern that is a counter to the patterns that normally originate from self-cherishing. And the other side of that is the fourth benefit, that we accumulate merit much more quickly. It's much easier to develop virtuous minds, to develop qualities such as generosity, patience, compassion, and so forth, if we are doing work on bringing our self-cherishing under control, and if we are relying on Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in order to do that, in order to empower our practice. And in this section, Geshela quotes the Buddha in the Condensed Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, where he is talking about the scale of the merit that we engender by taking refuge. So it says, if the merit from taking refuge had form, the three realms would be too small to accommodate it. The great ocean, the source of all water, cannot be measured with a cup. So again, I think it's really useful to contemplate these as literal explanations of the benefit of refuge. They're not extravagant, they're not exaggerations. If you analyse and think about it in terms of your own behaviour, then we can see how this works and deepens our understanding of refuge. The fifth one sort of follows from the previous two, so we won't fall into lower realms, and we will gain a higher rebirth because that's the essence of the aspiration. That's one of the principal causes that brings us to take refuge. Similarly, we can't be influenced by internal or external hindrances, and also we experience success both in our Dharma activities and worldly activities. And this, of course, reflects the previous point, number 4, that we're accumulating extensive merit quickly as a result of generating the attitude of refuge. Also, of course, in the case of the Mahayana refuge, we can attain enlightenment quickly, because if we have taken the Mahayana refuge, enlightenment is our goal. That's what we're walking. That's ultimately what we're working towards. And the deeper our refuge becomes, the more natural, genuine, and heartfelt it becomes, then enlightenment becomes the centerpiece of what we're aspiring to. And so naturally, if we're strongly and genuinely aspiring to something, we're going to come closer to that goal. Then Geshe concludes the chapter by giving us guidance on a type of one of the meditation techniques that we can take in order to get a better understanding of refuge. So, for example, if we're looking at it from the point of view of the small scope refuge, we can reflect on the type of experience that we would have if we were reborn in a lower realm. So Geshe gives the example of having taken rebirth in the animal realm, for example. So if we actually imagine that experience, what it would be like to be vulnerable, to be preyed upon, to have no helper, to have nobody who's providing us with food, shelter, and so forth, how vulnerable we are. If we generate a sense of that and recognise that that's actually the experience of most living beings on this planet, this isn't made up, this is actually the type of experience that most living beings have, well then that develops our renunciation. And if we then focus on the fact that there is a way out of that type of possibility, namely through the development of our own realisation of the Dharma, well then that strengthens our capacity for refuge. And Geshela suggests that we can then visualise the refuge objects and do the refuge prayers. It's a very, very great example of the way we can apply these teachings in our meditation to build our motivation. And finally, Geshela concludes this chapter by giving an anecdote about when Atisha went to Tibet. So, of course, as we all know, Atisha was an enormously high and accomplished scholar and was an expert both in the teaching and practice of all subjects of the path. But the subject that he particularly taught when he was in Tibet was the subject of refuge. And as a result of that, the Tibetans came to give him the nickname of being the Refuge Lama, because he would continuously teach on that subject. And Geshela says that Atisha himself was really, really happy when he heard that this was happening, because he saw that this meant that the students in Tibet really got the fact, the hugely important fact, that we can't progress unless we have a basis of refuge. So that's the end of the chapter. So what I thought I would do next, and again this is something that Geshela would do often in the last subject of Path to Enlightenment, is just put this subject in the context of the overall path. So some of the subjects that collectively Pam, Anna and I have gone through this year, and also some of the subjects that will be covered from Path to Enlightenment in the following years. So the first things that the Path to Enlightenment emphasises, the first thing that it suggests we do, is that we understand where these teachings have come from. After all, Path to Enlightenment is not simply a presentation of the sutras of Shakyamuni Buddha. It's a Buddhist text, but it doesn't simply present the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. It's a composition, a compilation of various Buddhist texts that originates from the teachings of Atisha and Jetsun Tsongkhapa. So in order to be confident that the way they have understood these texts and that the way they have understood, that the way that they have presented them can be relied upon, then there's a detailed explanation of who Atisha was, who Tsongkhapa was, and their life stories, so we can understand how it is that these texts that they produce can be relied on. Again, as a preliminary subject, before we actually get into the details of the practice, Path to Enlightenment gives us an explanation of the qualities of these teachings. So how do they work? Why practice Path to Enlightenment? Again, there's so many different teachings, so many different methods. What is it about practicing according to the Path to Enlightenment tradition that's special? And again, there are a number of qualities that I won't go through again in detail, but the essence of it, or the preeminent one, is that Path to Enlightenment is practical. It's like a manual. Its purpose isn't simply to convey information. Its purpose isn't simply that we gain a better, deeper understanding of what the Buddha taught. Its main purpose is to give us the tools in order to apply these in our daily life, to become better people, to develop our compassion, to develop our love, our generosity, and to make us better equipped to deal with the minds that can disrupt our life, our anger, our attachment, our ego, and so forth. Path to Enlightenment is basically a manual telling us how to get from our current state, which tends to be so coloured by self-cherishing, to the state of enlightenment. Another important quality is that it's comprehensive. So people say that the Buddha taught 84,000 different teachings. There's nothing that's missed out by Path to Enlightenment. Path to Enlightenment alone has everything that any practitioner would need in order to progress according to the small, medium or great scope teachings. It also, because there are 84,000 different teachings, if we don't know the context, then they could appear contradictory. Path to Enlightenment explains why that isn't actually the case, how each teaching can be understood in a particular context. And also it's ordered. So again, if we're starting out, it's really difficult to understand what's the teaching that I should concentrate on first. Should I concentrate on developing my compassion? Should I concentrate on impermanence? The Buddha said that impermanence, the teachings of impermanence, are like an elephant's footprints. They're incredibly important. Should I do that first? Since it said that the opponent to all delusions is the wisdom perceiving emptiness, should I concentrate on the teachings of emptiness, the wisdom teachings first? Path to Enlightenment solves that confusion for us because it gives us an ordered series of practices leading from subjects that are closer to where we are at the moment, right through to the most subtle subjects, including instruction on how to meditate on emptiness. It also reminds us how to listen to the teachings, how we should regard them. So and this brings us back to the fact that Path to Enlightenment isn't simply information, and it isn't simply providing guidance for an ordinary purpose. It's providing guidance in order for us individually, personally, to achieve the deepest transformation, the deepest realization of our potential. And if we understand that, well, then we don't regard this guidance as ordinary speech. We don't regard it in the same way that we would regard speech given for entertainment or information about how to buy a new car. The information, the teachings that are provided by the Path to Enlightenment go to the very core of our future and our potential. So Path to Enlightenment reminds us of that, and that therefore we should adopt a proper and open approach in order to listening to and understanding the teachings in order to gain the most benefit from them. We then go into Guru Yoga, which in some part of the Path to Enlightenment texts is, usually it's taught in the way that it is here, namely that it's taught at the beginning, but not always. So there are some Path to Enlightenment texts where it's taught at the end, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama has actually said that particularly with Western students, sometimes it's better to try and approach Guru Yoga more at the end of Path to Enlightenment. But again, it's really a hugely important subject. Guru Yoga is described as the root of the path. It's the way that we generate inspiration and guidance for our practice. It does depend, it explains how we identify a reliable teacher who has the proper qualities who can help us. And it then shows us how to practice to gain the most benefit of that relationship. Of course, it also explains that we don't need to defer our practice of Path to Enlightenment until we have found a completely reliable teacher. And in fact, if we did that, it could be it could actually make it more complicated to practice, and it could also perhaps mislead us into not checking a prospective teacher properly. But based on checking properly and then relying on a teacher that we are confident personally has those qualities, well then Guru Yoga is the root of the path. The subject of leisure and fortune, that really, which is the first main subject, its purpose is to shock us out of our complacency, to shock us out of the fact that we really don't have any concept of the value of our current situation and of our current life. The essence of that value being that our current life, our current condition, give us the choice for any future that we would choose. Most living beings, even most human beings, don't have the opportunity to learn, to meditate, to develop their minds according to the practices of the path of enlightenment. And of course, non-human beings have no opportunity at all. So actually not taking this for granted, understanding the value of our opportunity is, from the point of view of the path of enlightenment, is really essential to motivate us. It leaves us, if we practice leisure and fortune, it leaves us feeling that that basically we have lucked out, that our current situation is incredibly fortunate, incredibly positive one to be in. The next step, although we have this wonderful opportunity, what we do know is that we don't have it forever. There's a whole lot of uncertainty, but one thing that we know without any uncertainty is that the current opportunity that we have to practice will end. When it will end, we absolutely don't know. But what we also know is that when we die, that most of the things that are really important to us now are going to be of limited use to us when we're actually on our deathbed. Our money can't help, no matter how much money we have. Our friends and family at that point are unable to help us. Our body, our most precious and intimate possession at that point, can't help. The only thing that can help us at the time of death is how much good heart we've developed, how much peace of mind we've developed, how much wisdom we've developed. And so meditation on impermanence reminds us of it and helps us to dispel a lot of the fear of death. It enables us to approach death in a much more realistic and positive way. The teachings in the lower realms remind us that we have no idea what will happen to us after our death, but we do know, looking around us, that there are many living beings who do not have the fortunate conditions that we have. We know, again, from the teachings of leisure and fortune, that most living beings simply do not have the capacity to practice, to develop their positive minds, and to oppose their self-cherishing mind. And of course, that's plugged straight into refuge, because the first type of refuge, the refuge of the small scope, is that we want to avoid that result. And the way of avoiding that result is to turn our mind around in a different direction, to turn away from the self-cherishing mind towards the enlightened mind. And hence, based on that, we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma and Sangha. The last subject in the small scope is karma. So actually, the most simple, straightforward thing that we do in our practice once we've taken refuge is to be careful of our mind, because our mind also determines our speech and determines our bodily actions. And it's our minds, our speech and our actions which create karma, according to the principles of karma, whereby we will experience results that are similar to the cause, just as cause and effect works in the physical universe as well. So by understanding karma, by being mindful of karma, by being aware of the main types of positive karmas of body, speech and mind, of negative karmas of body, speech and mind, and practicing it in accordance with those, well, then we're actually putting refuge into effect. We're actually working on our self-cherishing. We're actually developing our positive minds. If we're practicing the medium scope, then we're seeing the problem in a slightly different way. So the problem isn't simply that we may be reborn in a lower rebirth. From a medium scope perspective, the problem is that we're caught in cyclic existence, and whether we're experiencing a higher rebirth within cyclic existence or a lower rebirth within cyclic existence, it can never be fully satisfactory. Because if we analyse, as explained in Path of Enlightenment, there are a cyclic existence that is having 5 aggregates bound by delusion and karma, will always have faults, such as the 8 faults, the 6 faults, and so forth. This is the first noble truth. Why does that happen? It happens because of karma. And why does karma happen? Because of delusion. And this is the second noble truth. So Path of Enlightenment explains the various types of delusion and enables us to identify them in our own continuum. And it explains what underlies most of those delusions, namely the mind of self-cherishing, and the ultimate opponent to that, to the mind of self-cherishing, namely the wisdom that opposes self-grasping. And of course, it also explains the various other opponents that we can apply to anger, attachment, pride, and so forth. Medium scope also goes into a detailed explanation of how karma works via the 12 dependent links, and finishes up by focusing on the third and fourth noble truth. So the third noble truth, the true paths, in this case that's explained in terms of the three higher trainings. The trainings of ethics, concentration and wisdom. These actually include all of the small scope and medium scope subjects. And the ultimate path is the wisdom perceiving emptiness, and this is the path we take for the result of the fourth noble truth, the cessation of suffering. The great scope again sees refuge in a slightly different way. The problem isn't only the psychic existence that we experience, but the fact that everyone that we care about is ultimately going through the same experience. And not just everybody that we care about, every other living being, every fellow living being who has the experience of psychic existence is going to have faced the same difficulties over and over again until they solve that problem. So from the point of view of the great scope, the best thing we could do is to be able not only to liberate ourselves from psychic existence, but to gain the capabilities, the wisdom and the virtues that will help us to guide every other living being out of psychic existence, just as we've been guided by such pure teachers as Geshe Loden, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, Shakyamuni Buddha, and so forth. So from a great scope point of view, the best thing that we can do is to generate the mind of enlightenment, bodhichitta, to attain enlightenment, to become a bodhisattva, and to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all. And the great scope teaching of the text goes through all of this in great detail. The definition of it, the methods to develop bodhicitta, including the 7 cause and effect method, the method of equalising, exchanging ourselves with others, the bodhicitta vows, and then goes through an explanation of each of the 6 perfections, how we change our ordinary generosity, our seed of generosity, into the limitless, perfect, pure generosity of the bodhisattva, and so forth. So with our ethics or non-harmfulness. And then finally, Geshela gives a brief explanation of the Vajrayana and explains that its objective is exactly the same as the perfection vehicle, that is, the approach to enlightenment gained by practicing the 6 perfections, including ultimately the perfection of wisdom. So it seeks to do exactly the same, to liberate every living being from psychic existence. It leads to the same point, but its method is different, and its method is more rapid. And so therefore, for practitioners who are interested, then there's also the possibility of practicing Vajrayana. But the crucial point that Geshela makes is that Vajrayana is only successful, only effective, based on the foundation of path of enlightenment, based on the 3 principal paths of renunciation, bodhicitta, and wisdom. And certainly we can practice Vajrayana simultaneously while training in the perfection vehicle, but ultimately our success in Vajrayana practice depends on being on a proper and genuine and assiduous practice of the path of enlightenment. So that's me galloping through the path of enlightenment, and that's the end of path of enlightenment for 2021. And we're a bit short of time, so we'll get straight into the dedication prayers. And we'll do the final prayer of the graduated path again in Tibetan and English. Just wait for a moment. Sorry, I probably sprung the Tibetan on you by surprise, mate. Brilliant, thank you. Deni rindu bele tsonyin katayam pa gangshi sapare lome mare kidong dowana amren jawe wangpoda gyuchi dema sempe tsera kanto yang jampe yang chi tsewe jezone tempe limpa konsang lam ji chu nene rupe janam ni jishu rangi jishin tope lam ji ne shudra tsewe rangwe tak chi trove chi bompa salje Jawe temba yon ring tinju temba rin chen chogi ma cha cha chang yamba jupe chong ing je chenbo ira chopai pende te de sawaje se che jawe de jong trin le dro jang jo lan ji rim pe chan ta ra nan chi la pel te shin jawe tse pa indo chang chu chi lan sa tu pe ton chen ju je chi Kal chen sel je me dang me me se la kundu jawe nga pa yi na da lan zang ze wa ma ju chi gang se te pa cho la cho cho chu zo xian dro la zo pa de ye do den an chi ta to tro je chi tra shi ja zu chu gong cham chu chi. By the two collections, vast space, amassed with effort for a long time, may I become a chief of conquerors, a guide for all beings whose mind's eye is blinded by ignorance. Also in all lives, while not yet come to that, may Manjushri favour me with his compassion. Finding the supreme path, complete with all stages of the teachings, may I please the conquerors by practicing well. By my precise understanding of the essential points of the path, with skillful means drawn along by strong compassion, and by dispelling the mental darkness of beings, may I uphold the conqueror's teaching for a long time. Where the supreme precious teaching has not spread, also where it has spread but become degenerate, with a mind deeply moved by great compassion, may I make clear this treasure of benefit and bliss. The stages of the path, excellently established by the marvellous deeds of the conquerors and their sons, give glory to the minds of those aspiring for liberation. May the conqueror's deeds be long preserved. May all humans and non-humans remove the obstructions and establish conditions favourable to cultivating the excellent path, never be parted for all of their lifetimes from the purest of paths which the Buddhas have praised. When someone makes effort to practice properly the 10 points of conduct of the Supreme Vehicle, may he always be assisted by the mighty protectors, and may oceans of good fortune spread out, reaching all. We'll do the prayer of praise to Mahakala. I think we might just do this in Tibetan. In Tibetan. Might just do it in Tibetan. Just Tibetan. Yeah. Okay, praise to Makala, 600 protector, protector of Geshe Loden, protector of the Tibetan Buddhist Society. On you se chen re si la sha sa lu sha du dang je vi na ya ka na po jian po da yi shan da chen sha dru dru ji jen ji na pa jian ye pa ri go ma pa tre wa zin dama dama ru ni yum pa du pa dam ni zi su di zhen xia pa zong ne qing wa xie tra bu zhen ye jie wan hong ba zi chen song tra bu tra zhen wa sin du ra yi le pa ju chi wo mi jo je ho ji da den drag zag mi gong a chu du shao chen rin chen du gang a yi wu la zhen Xing le zhen ne du ma lin zi bi bel den xia lu pa la xia sa du san xi den ba yen po zu wa dan gen zhe gu ban yen bo de ba da sha ben lo ko zhang qie nang ji chen yuan ba jie dang jie xi wa dang ji ru niu du za lu. And we'll do the special dedication in Tibetan and English. Jiraji penong ka ge wayang tu sum de shik se che tong che chi tse pa men la ma lo dro pa lung to dang ju jin pe ju ru te to le tse ra kan tu te jo ko lo ji rang mi ra jing ge jong jang sen yang da da wa rin ni lan ji ru ka ta jin shu. Whatever white virtues we have thus created, we dedicate as causes, enabling us to uphold the holy dharma of scripture and realization, and to fulfill without exception the prayers and deeds of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the three times. By the power of this merit in all our lives, may we never be parted from the four wheels of Mahayana, and may we complete the journey on the paths of renunciation, bodhichitta, pure view, and the two stages. General dedication, Tibetan and English. Gewandi che boko so nan yeshe so exoshe so nam yeshe le jong we dam this virtue, may all beings complete the collections of wisdom and merit and attain the two holy bodies arisen from wisdom and merit. Jiangju Sen Jo Rimbo Chi Ma Che Pa Che Jo Ji Che Pa Nyamba Me Pa Ye Gan Ne Gan Du May the precious superior mind of enlightenment be generated in those who are not yet generated it, and not decrease in those who have developed it, but increase continuously. So, thank you again so much, everybody. A reminder that next Sunday at 4 o'clock we have White Tara practice, which is the final session for the year, and Path to Enlightenment class will resume on Sundays next year. Same bat time, same bat channel. See you all then. Thank you very much.